Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we have episode 233 today, and we are
Yes.
officially kicking off year
6.
6 of Digital to Dice.
You know, it's too bad that 233 isn't a multiple of 6 or 3.
Well, the 2 3s are 6, I guess.
No, in order to be a multiple of 3, it needs to end in a 3, 6, or a 9. 2
and
three
that's
is
why,
5.
see, that's why you are here, is you bring up this stuff that
It'd be
educates us all.
So, yes. So I finally found my purpose after 5 years and change.
All right. Anyway, hey, ways to get a hold of us. Digitaltodice.com. Digitaltodice.com is the website. 978-751-DICE is the text line. Send us a text. Digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. And over on Facebook, join the Facebook group and chat with us. Facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. Now, Ron, we do have a very special guest here that's going to help us kick off year 6 of the show.
It's a very nice guest, too.
It is. And we're really excited to have him on. And none other than Keith Avallone from Play Games. Keith, thanks for coming on the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being on with us.
What can we talk about? Tons to talk about.
Oh, let me see here. Yeah, what can we talk about here? Let's talk about games, shall we? Let's talk about games.
That'd be great.
That's good because, my Chinese cooking skills, aren't that great anymore.
I get up this morning and I had all this stir fry around my bedroom.
Did you really?
I must have been walking in my sleep.
I saw what you did there.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had to do it. Where's my thing? There we go. There's the drums.
Aunt Becky will not be cleaning up your room after.
All right. Anyway, hey, before we get going, Keith, we do have one question that we like to ask all our guests that come on the show.
All right.
And that question is, if you could go back in time and attend any sporting event at all, what would that event be?
I would go back to Tulane Stadium in November of 1970 and watch Tom Dempsey kick the 63-yard field goal.
That was awesome one. I've watched that clip thousands of times.
It never ceases to amaze. It's such a great moment. I mean, when he hits the ball, it's like boom, a cannon going off, and there's Don Criqui saying, "I don't believe it," because he's talking about it like,
yeah,
what are you doing here? This is just what a joke. They're actually going to try a 63-yard field goal. And then when he hits it, it's like an unbelievable moment.
So what makes you say that? Because we talked a little bit before you came on. You're not from Detroit or New Orleans. You're out in Colorado. You grew up on the East Coast. So, I mean, nothing wrong with that. But
well, I am a big Saints fan.
Oh, are you? Okay.
And there's a story behind that. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. A lot of people think my dad was in the military. Actually, he was in the process of changing careers. He's actually a musician. He was a professional musician at first. He played with Buddy Rich and Johnny Mathis.
Oh, wow.
Then he got out of that because after he got married, because he didn't want to be working until 4 a.m. Then he started teaching music. And then my brother was diagnosed. This is a long story here. I'll try to keep it concise. My brother was diagnosed with asthma, and in those days, the cure for that was to go move to a dry climate. So we had to move to Arizona. We moved to Arizona. There was basically a school for delinquent boys, basically a minimum security prison for kids that were not old enough to go to prison. It was out in the middle of the desert in Arizona, a place called Fort Grant, the Arizona State Industrial School. And they hired my dad to teach the band there. And in doing so, he got really interested in counseling. He was really kind of a teacher, part counselor. And then he made the switch from music to counseling. He got his degree in psychology, and he finished his career as a career counselor at the University of Texas at San Antonio. So he was in the process of this career change, and we kind of followed him along all over the country. We went from Connecticut to Arizona to Wisconsin, and then to Texas. And so when we moved to Wisconsin, this was 1967. I didn't know anything about football, but of course it was Packers country. Everybody in my class, 6th grade class, everybody loved football. Everybody loved the Packers. And I knew that if I wanted to fit in, I needed to follow football, right? So, but being myself, it's like I didn't want to be like everybody else and follow the Packers. I needed to follow a different team. What team should I follow? And so I'm thinking, well, what team should I follow? And I was looking through the newspaper, and there was this picture of this guy wearing a helmet with a fleur-de-lis on it. I thought, oh, that's cool. What team is that? It's the Boy Scout symbol, right?
That's
So
right.
I'm reading it. It's Dave Witzel from the New Orleans Saints. I'm saying, that's my team. So that was my team from then on. And little did I know how much pain it was going to bring me over the years. Although they got better once Jim Mora arrived, but that wasn't until 1986. So it was basically 20 years of misery.
The
But
paper
anyway,
bags
so-
were great. I love the paper bags on the fans.
Yes. So with that as the context, that moment in 1970 was like unbelievable. You know, for a Saints fan, for a 13-year-old Saints fan, it was incredibly meaningful. So I remember I raced home to we had band practice. I played the city band on Monday when they practiced on Monday nights, but I always wanted to catch the halftime highlights with Howard Cosell, because that was the only way you could see highlights in those days, you know. So I'd run on. I definitely made a mad dash that day so I could actually, because I hadn't seen it. I just heard about it, you know. So I made it home in time for the halftime highlights and got to see him kick it, you know, and it was a great moment.
I think he actually teed it up from his own 37, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, he did.
On
Yes,
the goal
he did.
line. Yeah.
It was an 8-yard. They get an extra yard just so you'd be able to clear the line. So and the Lions barely rushed it. You could see in the replay, it's kind of like, you know, he's never going to make this. But man, when he hit that ball with his foot, boom!
It didn't clear that bar by much.
No,
I mean, it wouldn't have been good from 63 and a half.
No.
Didn't need it to be, though.
Right.
So, you know, if your dad was played with Johnny Mathis, chances are he was awful good.
Chances are awful good. Yes, right.
When the Baltimore kicker hit the 65-yarder a couple years ago, that was also against the Lions. So, both the record sets were against the Lions, and they were both at sea level because the Baltimore kick was in Detroit, was at Ford Field.
Right.
So it wasn't like when Elam hit the 63-yarder a few years ago in Denver. You know, that was at altitude, you know.
Yeah, and Elam's kick wasn't a game winner. It was just, I think it was at halftime.
Halftime.
So, yeah, so both of those kicks that were against Detroit, and they both were game-winning kicks.
And both on relatively, you know, low altitude kicks, too.
Yeah.
So,
do you think we'll see a kick longer than 65?
Oh, yeah. You know, I just finished rating the NFL season for second season. And, you know, so I get a look, an up-close look, deep dive into the stats every year when I prepare that release. And, I mean, it's getting to the point now where kickers they just don't miss from any distance, really. That's the thing that I really noticed this year was, you know, in years past, there's kind of like a distribution, a bell curve. So as you got further out, you know, the percentage would go down. So you're more likely to hit a 40-yarder, more likely to hit a 30-yarder than a 40-yarder, more likely to hit a 40-yarder than a 50-yarder. But really now, I mean, honestly, it's they basically have the same percentage from any distance, even extra points. You know, it's like 95% from whether you're kicking an extra point or whether you're kicking it from 50-something yards. It's I mean, that's overstating it, but it's getting more and more true. It's more and more like that. And I do see a day where, I mean, I think there's a physical limit as to how far you can kick a football, but I don't think we've reached it. I bet someday somebody will kick a 70-yard field goal.
Boy, that'd be a long one, yeah. You know, speaking about field goals and accuracy and things, you know, we play a lot of games here in the community, and I was playing a game the other day, and I was trying to kick a 30 or a 31-yard field goal, and I had less than a 50% chance of hitting it with my kicker.
Right.
I was playing 70s football.
Yes.
And it's like, I can't believe that I have the ball on the 14-yard line, and I'm setting up to kick a 31-yard field goal, and it's like 50% or 50.6% of chance of hitting this field goal from 30. That's nuts.
Yeah. I always think of that. I think I want to say it was Bob Timberlake of the 1966 Giants, I think it was, where he hit like 1 out of 17 field goal attempts. Might have been 1 out of 12. It was like he hit like 1 out of 17. And it's like, after you missed the 6th or 7th, why are you still kicking it? You know, how do they even let him try that many field goals?
Right.
Well, the upside is if you missed, you got the ball at the 20. So if you
That's
were
right.
kicking a 35, 40, or 50 yarder, it was, just the same as a punt.
But it does make you wonder, though, and that's a great point, Ron. It always makes you wonder, why didn't they try more field goals then? Because, you'll see, like, you look at the 69 season or the 70 season, the leading kicker will have 25, maybe 30 field goals attempts tops. But it's like, why wouldn't you just try it all the time?
I think they said the ball had to land inside the 20 for it to be brought to the 20. So in other words, if you tried an 80-yard field goal and you only kicked it to midfield, that's where the ball would go.
Right.
Yeah, but the punting averages in those days were like the typical punter averaged like 35, 38 yards a kick.
Well, they were using the same football. Today, there's a special kickers football.
Right. But what I'm saying is you could clearly kick the ball further from a tee than you could as the punter. So why not just try the field goal? You'll kick it further. Yeah. And, I don't know why they didn't think of that.
What's the college record? Because they can use a tee in college and they can't in the pros. What is it, 66 or 67?
I think it was. I know Russell Erxleben,
right,
way back, kicked a 66-yarder in college,
and that's why he was drafted in the first round by your Saints.
That's right, and he was another great pick, wasn't he? Wasn't that a great pick?
Boy, we haven't had this much New York Saints football talk on the channel in quite some time.
Yes.
So Keith, what got you into gaming?
I always played games. I grew up in a real small town in Wisconsin. I was born in Connecticut. We moved to Arizona, moved to Wisconsin at the age of 10. And, it was a small town, 6,000 people, and there wasn't a lot going on. We didn't have a lot of money. We were pretty poor, so board games, were, we played a lot of cards. We played a lot of board games. And that's what got me into games. It was a way of entertainment, form of entertainment. We only had like a couple of TV stations. They didn't even come in that well. So we didn't have a lot of entertainment options. We played a lot of games.
Okay.
And that, plus the fact that I enjoyed playing games, so we played more games. That's what kind of got me into it. And it wasn't too long before I was, kind of designing my own games. It was kind of almost like a group project. Our neighborhood kids, we would play these games. And one of the things we made an expanded version of Monopoly. We made our own board. We added properties. We had a set of properties to each side. So it was like a super big Monopoly. And we get the thrill of naming the streets and the hotels.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and that's the kind of thing we would do. We'd make games like that and play them. So that's kind of how I got into playing games. And it's just, just a matter of doing something you enjoy and discovering that you enjoy it and then doing it more.
So what about sports gaming?
So as I mentioned, when we moved to Wisconsin, that's when I, kind of by default, I realized I needed to follow football. And then again, once I started following, I was like, well, this is pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. The thing about football that I really enjoyed was the color, the uniforms and the helmets and the pageantry of it. And that was very, very appealing to me. And so I really became a pretty strong football fan. And I wanted to get the greatest Christmas gift I ever got. You see Ralphie in the BB gun. I had a similar experience, but for me, it was an electric football game. I wanted an electric football game. And my mom and dad were very cagey about it, saying, "No, I don't think we're going to be able to get that for you." And then lo and behold, there it was under the tree that Christmas morning, and it was the most thrilling thing for me. And so that was how I started playing a football game. It was electric football, and we played that a lot. Me and my best friend Don, who lived on a dairy farm outside Sparta. He and I, we were both broke. We had no money, but I used to be able to make like a little money ironing clothes and doing some. I get a little birthday money every now and again. We teamed up. We played a lot of electric football. He got an electric football game. I got an electric football game. We sent away.
Did you ever figure out how to pass?
With the little guy going.
Yeah,
we did that. And the kicker, you could kick the field goals too. So we would send away to two-door for the blank teams. Well, first of all, we sent away for teams because you could order them from Tudor. You know, that you could
Right.
order the game. My game came with the Colts and the Packers, so of course I sent away immediately and got the Saints. And I was a little disappointed because I don't know where they had them done, but they were very quickly painted, and you know, they're kind of the little fleur-de-lis on the helmet didn't look. It was still like an X. It didn't look like a fleur-de-lis, and so I was kind of disappointed. And we sent away for a couple of other teams like that, and they were similarly quickly painted. They didn't seem to have much quality control. So we decided, let's just buy the blank teams. We'll paint them ourselves. So eventually, we had all 26 NFL teams between the two of us, and we would play out like a whole schedule. You know, like we'd have our schedule, and we'd play. I would play the Colts and the Browns, and I would play the Saints and the Rams or whatever, and he would play his part of the games. And after a while, we got to this. We at that point we were like 13, 14 years old, and you know, electric football is fun, but it left a lot to be desired in terms of realism. You know, there wasn't any. All the teams were the same. We kind of got the idea that you know, we'd like to have a game that sort of captured real football. And so, you know, like a lot of kids from our era, we would we would go to the drugstore and get the football magazines, and you'd see the ads in the back. And basically for us, it came down to APBA or Stratomatic. And we sent away to both APBA and Stratomatic for the literature, you know, and we waited with bated breath until they both arrived. And they both arrived within a couple of days of each other. We got together and we studied those pamphlets and then literature just, you know, religiously. And we ultimately, it was very close. We didn't really, you know, we liked both the games. They both looked really super exciting, but we could only afford one. In fact, we had to team up our funds in order to be able to buy one. Neither of us had enough money to buy one. So we decided to team up our funds and buy one, and we opted for APBA. So we bought the APBA game and we played that game. I'm not exaggerating to say we played literally thousands of APBA football games.
Greg Barrett said that you were a huge APBA guy.
Oh my gosh, we would go out to my friends. So my friend lived on a dairy farm about 6 miles from my house. We would ride our bikes out to his house in the afternoon. Like we had this league of like 8 guys. There's like 8 of us. We would, and his mom and dad lived in one house. His grandfather lived in another house. So we're on same property. And so we would go over to Don's house. We'd ride our bikes over there in the afternoon. We'd help with the chores. We would put pizza in the oven, those little Geno's frozen pizzas.
Okay.
We would have a draft. We would draft our APBA. We would draft all 8 teams. We would play an entire season that night. We'd play the entire season. We'd stay up till like 5 a.m. playing the entire 10-game season, and then we'd have another draft, and then we'd help with the chores, and then we'd go home and just that. So I'm not exaggerating to say we played literally thousands of APBA football games. We played 26 seasons of our APBA football league, and we played 26 seasons in the span of about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years. You know, so
still have keep stats. Still have them.
I do have them. I should actually run to the garage and show. I've got the binders. We would do it on carbon paper. You know,
oh my word!
We type it out so that we could each have copies. You know, and so Don would type it out, and then we'd each get a copy of the stats. Yeah, I know it. It's craziness, isn't it? I couldn't. We cleaned out the crawl space a couple of years ago, and I had it on the trash pile because I thought I'm never going to use. You know, I'm not going to look at these again. I'm just going to throw it away. Couldn't bring myself to throw it away.
You should actually scan them and put them on the play site.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, people would look at that stuff.
You know how long it would take me to scan it? I'm talking about, there's probably, I don't know how many pages it would be. It's probably 4 or 5 massive notebooks of stats, typewritten stats.
That's still incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was a labor of love. We loved it. Of course, and the thing was, you know, we never, you know, in thinking about it now, it's odd because we never wanted to play. We felt like if we used the stars of the NFL,
right,
our games would be too good. You know, we didn't want to we'd have like an all-star league. We didn't want to have an all-star league. So we always drafted from the extra players. So the stars of our league were guys like Ed Hargett and King Hill and John Stofa, and
Household names, not even in their own house. Yeah.
Clem Turner, Mac Hill, guys like Tom Smiley, guys like that. Those are our major stars. And
So
you
it
know,
must have been so thrilling when they would go through and play in Green Bay, and you'd see them on TV on Sundays or on Monday night if you got ABC to see those, like, oh yeah, here,
Well,
I'm not here to see Roger Staubach and Tony Hill. I
see
got Preston Pearson this week,
Yeah, right.
So so you talked a little bit about expanding games such as Monopoly and some of the war games, and you played, somewhere short of 20,000 APBA football games. What caused you, or what was your creative impetus to create your own games, the sports games?
Well, we played APBA football, and there were things about it that we didn't like. Particularly, like one of the things that I didn't like about it was the fact that if you had Bobby Douglas who got sacked, if you had the 1969 card of Bobby Douglas who got sacked like 80 times, but he's a pretty good runner, you could build a great offensive line, but he'd still get sacked 80 times because all the sack numbers were on his on the P column. So stuff like that. We wanted tinkering. Of course, when we first started with that, but there was no medium pass. It was a short pass and a long pass. And we thought we need to have a medium pass. We made our own medium pass. So after a while, it was like, well, we made so many changes. Let's just make our own game, or that's the way I felt about it. So I'm going to make my own game. So that's when I started messing around and making my own football game. And that was sort of the impetus for it.
So second season, your first game?
Second season was my first game, although it had many different forms in the 70s. It really kind of the form that it's in right now really came along in the 80s, the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But it's essentially unchanged since then. But yeah, there was about a 5-year period between like 1978 and 1982 where the game was in several different kind of forms.
Okay.
And it sort of moved toward the second season model by the early to mid 80s. But that was my first attempt at a sports game.
Okay.
Now, did you in that time, you're talking like late 70s, early 80s, that's when the whole video game craze started. And that's the direction I went. And I kind of miss all these stories of people playing APBA in the 70s and 80s and growing up, because I love playing all these games now on the tabletop now that I'm older. But I went the video game route, the Atari, the Nintendo, the Sega, and all that stuff there. And it's only when I get into my 50s when I had a hard time with controllers and this and that I come over to cards and dice and tabletop sports. Is that something that just didn't appeal to you, or did you get into the video games at that time?
I've never really gotten into computer games or video games. I mean, those are two really kind of different genres. The computer games, which generally, will generate the stats and keep the stats for you. And I've never really, that's just not grabbed me. Now, of course, I've got kids, and when they were younger, they were very much into video games. Sam particularly likes video games. So we did we had a GameCube, and we played a lot of Mario Party and all the different GameCube games, and I did get a copy of Tiger Woods Golf, and I got a copy of Madden, and I got a copy of the NHL. I think it's 2K3. So I did try them and play them, but I didn't, and I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy them, but it never really grabbed me. I didn't like the fact that essentially, really, those are games first. They're first games. They're not really sims. You could take it. I wouldn't say it bothered me, but it wasn't lost on me that if you're playing Madden and you've got the worst team in the NFL, and I'm playing against the best team in the NFL, but that person doesn't know how to play Madden, I'm going to win. Mm-hmm. And that to me, was like, well, it made it less fun. So I never really, found the appeal.
Yeah, I just picked up EA's PGA Tour on the Steam sale. Picked it up for $11, $85 game. And with the 3 collects, it's great. It really is. Comes with 39 courses and all that.
Yeah.
And I just in trying to qualify for the PGA Tour, I tore apart a course in in cavalry and shot 41 under for 4 rounds.
Nice.
That first of all, that's fantastic. 59, 63, 59, 59.
Yeah.
But that's not even close to anywhere realistic. So, to drive home your point is like, it's fun, but it's not realistic.
Well, that points to really one of the key things I think about this whole hobby is that, what is fun? And those games are designed to, I guarantee you, there are people who would have done what you did, Ron, and thought that was incredibly fun. Super fun, and they couldn't wait to play it again because that's just the way they're built. They're wired, and then there are people who are wired differently, where realism is important, and
right.
So that's different strokes for different folks. So
sure,
all that to say, video games are cool, but it's not the kind of thing that I really want to spend a lot of my time doing.
Yeah, that's the route that I went, and I missed out on all the fun, that I have.
Catching up later.
Yeah, I am. And my thing is I remember getting a copy of Madden, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And they had a little tutorial to help you play the game. And it's like, okay, spin and get into the end zone. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't get the guy to spin and score a touchdown. I failed the whole tutorial. And then I got NBA 2K, and I'm a casual basketball guy, but I like to shoot and pass and play some basketball. And there was 13 different ways to take a shot, push here, hit that, click that, and he'll do a fadeaway. Now, if you go this way and this way and this way and this way, he'll do it. And I'm looking down at my hands, and they're taking the ball away from me. And I go, this is not meant for me anymore. And
it's
I did a video game.
Yeah,
I did a video game podcast for about 10 years, and my co-host, who's my age, and she laughed at me. She goes, Dave, you're not the target demographic anymore. You're in your 50s. And I says, you're exactly right. And they just kept making the games more complex and more complex and more complex. I'm like, why? And they're like, because that's what the young kids want. They want that complexity. And now that it's instead of just a couple of buttons for Madden in the past, you're snapping it, you're looking, you're directing, you're passing, you're telling the guy what to do. There's like 9 buttons you got to press to complete a pass sometimes. I can't do that, So when I started playing these games here, whether it was, Sims on the computer, like Action PC and Strat PC football, I could just kick back. And I was amazed that I could just kind of enjoy the game without all the pressure of of dexterity. Like you said, it's all about dexterity. If someone played me and I had the Pittsburgh Steelers champion Super Bowl and they had the 76 Buccaneers, they would beat me because, that's how bad I am. So when the sports Sims games, I was like, wow, I can actually enjoy these games. There's no pressure. Take my time and just, call the plays or roll the dice or watch it on the screen. And it was relaxing, which is what we need late in life with all the adulting going on, coming down here and playing a game and not feeling any pressure and just having the game play out and then talking about it with your friends. There's something magical about that I never got with video games.
That command is
couldn't agree more
right now.
Well, someone said a magic word.
I didn't hear it. What was it?
I don't know, but my madam speaker decided that she needed to jump in the conversation. I don't know what you said there, Dave, but whatever it was not supported by Amazon. So Keith, how did second season turn into play?
How did that happen? I started, so I guess it goes back to Jim Gordon's sports game message board back in the late 90s. Was kind of one of those bulletin boards. I guess you kind of have to have experienced that to know what I'm talking about. And I got subscribed to that, and so I would get messages, and I mentioned, I've got this football game that I'm working on, and I'd like to. People would say, I'd like to play that, so I would send it to them, and they would play, and the word kind of spread, and pretty soon I was, mailing out copies to people, and I, had to start charging people. I sort of going broke mailing all this, going to Kinko's, and so. Pete Ventura, who was also, part of that group, he and I struck up a friendship, and he suggested that I start like my own company for it. And I thought, I was busy with my radio career at the time.
Was that what you did?
Yes, I was a disc jockey for many years.
Were you Wolfman Jack?
I was not Wolfman. I would have loved to have been Wolfman Jack. He's one of my. He actually was the inspiration for my radio career. Watching American Graffiti, that's when I decided. Seeing Wolfman Jack's like, I want to be a disc jockey. That's what I want.
What'd you spin? Oldies kind? What?
No, I was a top 40 disc jockey for many years. I worked
whereabouts in the Denver area?
I worked. I worked a bunch of small stations first. Got my big break in Houston. Worked at 93Q, KKBQ in Houston.
Wow.
Went to WPLJ in New York. Worked there with KDWB in Minneapolis. And then I went back to, I did Christian radio in Long Island for a year. Then I did country in Washington, D.C. at WMZQ. And then I went back to Top 40, moved back to Dallas and worked at Kiss FM in Dallas with Kid Craddock for 6-7 years. And then I switched over to The Wolf in Dallas, 99.5 The Wolf. And then I came to Denver. So, I did Top 40 until I got too old to do Top 40. I did Top 40 till I was about, I guess, 40, 42, 43.
There's an age where you just become too old for that kind of music.
Yeah, I mean, I still enjoyed it, but I didn't. I think the station kind of got leery of sending me out to high schools. It's like there's this old guy. This guy in his 40s. They want to be contemporary. And hearing
Dan Ingram air checks from the mid '80s is kind of cringe.
Yeah,
because he was in his 50s at that point. But
right.
Anyway.
Dan Ingram. Dan Taylor does a really good Dan Ingram impersonation. I knew Dan Taylor when I was working in New York and living in Stamford. Anyway, so all that to say, yeah, I did Top 40 for many years. Then when I got too old for that, then I did country and oldies and hot AC and Christian, and then I did what else did I do? I pretty much done everything, And then the radio gravy train. Well, the life of a disc jockey is moving from one city to another. Right. Like John, Dr. Johnny Fever on WKRP. Town to town, up and down the dial. That's reality for a disc jockey. So we got to Denver, and when it came time to move, we said, you know what, we're staying here. We're not moving. So that's when I started or restarted Play Games. But anyway, back to the original question.
Any of those skills or experience that you had with the disc jockey, did any of those come in to play with the gaming thing that you're doing now?
I would say yes, definitely. As a Top 40 disc jockey, you had to be concise. You had 15 seconds over a record intro to say it, and that's it. And it was unforgiving because that vocal would start, and you better be done. You had to be done. You did not have the opportunity to say, well, hold on, let me finish what I'm saying. So you had to learn how to be concise and you had to get timing down. And so concision is something that I think concision with narrative is something that's very important in radio, particularly Top 40 radio. And I feel like that has transferred over into like the sports game thing where you can tell a story on a line of a chart, rather than just like putting a number there. Say something like, tackled for a 2-yard loss or twists forward for a 3-yard gain or something like that. You can be concise, tell a story, but in a short manner. Also, I think the idea of keeping things moving.
So is that something that's in the back of your head as you design some of these games? Because if someone wasn't familiar with play.com games, they're very different style-wise as opposed to the strats and the APBAs. They're characteristic and story-driven. You look up the result and it tells you that. Was that something that was maybe subconscious from your days in trying to get in the weather, your joke, and where the traffic is backed up on the Landry?
Yeah, exactly. I would say it was subconscious. It certainly wasn't conscious. I think, because I was a disc jockey for a long time before, Play Games came on the scene. But I do feel like, and that, to Dave's point, I do feel like that was, is part of the way I do it because of my my radio background.
Mm-hmm.
The concision, telling a story in a short period of time and keeping things moving that's all very much an important part of radio. So I would say that yeah, it did impact in that way. I also think I had the privilege of working at a lot of really great stations. I worked at 5 different stations of the year, radio stations of the
Oh,
year.
wow.
Industry,
Nice.
yeah, 5 different ones. KISS and KDWB and KYGO here in Denver and the Wolf and what was the other one? Oh, and KKBQ. So those are each one of those while I was there was station of the year for their format. And part of the reason for that is their marketing. Their marketing and their understanding of the people they're trying to reach with their product. Rather than just making a great product, you also have to recognize who's consuming your product and why they're consuming their product and what they want out of your product and what you can give them that's different. So there's all those stations really emphasized the whole marketing mix. Now, I got my degree in advertising and marketing, so that part has always been super interesting to me also. But to see it in action at these radio stations was also very helpful, I think, in how I approach what I do with play games.
Okay.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
That makes a lot of sense. Because obviously CHR or top 40, targets to a younger audience. It's a lot more impressionable to consuming the product that you're offering them as opposed to oldies, where it doesn't.
And Ron, you have to say what CHR, contemporary hit radio, for those that don't know what CHR.
Right. Yes, contemporary, the modern day top 40, which is
CHR, right?
Right. Yeah, I would, when I did the college station, we'd sit there and read radio and records.
Oh yeah, the radio industry Bible. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
So you went into the second season. Was that the first game?
Well, that's the first game that I finished. Pete, Pete suggested I make a website and offer it, as an actual product. I did that, and I also figured as long as I got the website going, I had a couple other game ideas that I've been working on. I had a wrestling game, Face of the Mat, which I put together, it just kind of came together on a whim almost. I was doing an appearance for KDWB, and we had these WWF action figures, Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Hulk Hogan, and on the back of the package, it was like a bubble wrap package, and on the back of the package it had all the characters, all the different wrestlers in the series, and they had a little illustration of it. I thought, oh, that's pretty neat. That'd make a great game, and I got to thinking, how can you make a wrestling game? And so I came up with this wrestling game, and I played with a friend of mine at church, and he thought it was great, and his son played it, and so I had the basic bones in place for that game. And then I also had this space alien game called First Contact Your Town that I had developed. That was sort of like a B movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers type game. And so I put them all. I figured as long as I'm doing the football game, I might as well put the other games on there too. So that's how Play launched on January 1, 2000, with the second season, Face of the Mat, and First Contact Your Town.
Well, happy 25.
Yeah.
Yeah, 25 years, right?
Yeah. We have a guy in the chat room, Keith. His name is Steve Tower. And he's asking what all these games are all about. He's never heard of them before.
That's funny. Steve is such a good friend of mine personally, and also of our company. Steve and I met in person at the World Board Game Championships in 2013.
Oh, really? Okay.
He made the trip down from Boston. I made the trip from Denver. I drove the whole way. I don't know if I could do that anymore. I drove all the way from Denver to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and had a little booth there. And Steve drove down from Boston to kind of hang out that weekend, and we got to be good friends there. We played the first second season college all-star game together there, and ever since then we've I don't know, we just kind of connect. He's such a great guy, and really value his friendship and just love him as a person, and his family, his wife Jen and his kids Sonny and Cora. It's a great family, really good people.
Yeah, we've had him on the show a couple of times. Ironically, Steve's been on the show twice, and it was 100 episodes apart exactly.
Wow.
And so he's booking for the next
Well,
time,
now,
which is
how
like
far
2
are you,
years, but he'll be on 291. Yeah.
Dave? You and Steve are pretty close, aren't you, in terms of distance? Don't you
in
live like?
vicinity. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we're in
And you've
driving
never
distance.
gotten together in person?
No, and that's
Oh, there's no excuse for that.
and this is something we were talking about off the air before we started the show tonight. Was people have been talking, well, I don't say bugging me, but they've been dropping little bugs in my ear about I need to start something here on the East Coast where we can just have a gathering of cards and dice or sports sim people, and that's something that we're taking very seriously. We might be doing something, so I might have to talk to Steve about that, and what he thinks. Is I haven't been to any of the conventions yet, so I mean that's something that I'm seriously considering doing. Is trying to. I don't know if it would be a digital to dice one, or if it just be a board game convention or whatever it is. But yeah, it's
Well,
something we
there's
want to do.
something about playing, to enjoying the hobby in person. I mean, this is great to be able to talk to you via, digital means, and of course, you got plenty of social media where people can post the results and and post comments. But it just doesn't. It's just not the same as being in the same room, face to face with somebody playing a game with them. And being amongst a group of other people
Yeah.
who are doing the same thing. There's a dynamic at play there that is very difficult to put into words, but it's very real. And once you've experienced it, you won't forget it.
Yeah, it's something I definitely want to do.
Speaking of conventions, Keith, don't you have an announcement?
Nicely done, Ron.
You're welcome.
We talked about how so we wanted to have Dave come to be our speaker at Play.con 2024. But his wife's health situation was kind of tenuous, and so glad that's working out for you, Dave. Just the answer to prayer. But so we made it a point to put him first in line for the 2025 convention. So assuming all things go well on your end, we're planning to have Dave as being our keynote speaker for the Play.con 2025. So. Yay!
Okay, so now to those that are unaware, like even myself who've never been, what is the Play.con? What is it? What can I expect?
It is. We put it on our shirt here. I think it says. I don't know if you can see it on my shirt. It says the best weekend in sports, tabletop sports gaming, and it really is. We get together. It's almost not even about the games anymore. It's really more about just about hanging out with people who have the same passion as you do. We've all had the experience of trying to explain our hobby to other people who don't know what we're doing, and they give you that blank look like, oh, that's nice. They don't really get it.
No, they don't.
But to be amongst a group of people who do get it, there's just something indescribably satisfying about that. So we set up a schedule. It's officially a 2-day thing, Friday and Saturday, but really it's more like a 5 or 6 day thing. We have a pre-con picnic that we do Thursday night before the convention, and so once we did that, everybody wanted to be here Wednesday in order to make sure they're here for Thursday's activities. So when that started happening, we said, well, let's do something on Wednesday for the early bird arrivals. We'll have some sort of an organized event. We'll have a little reception. We'll get together, we'll play some games. So when we started doing that, then people said, well, I got to get here Tuesday then so that I don't miss the Wednesday thing. And so that's kind of where we're at right now, where people start getting here like on Tuesday or even Monday, and then so it's really almost like a week-long thing. And many hang out Sunday as well. But the actual official organized events are Thursday night and then Friday and Saturday. And we have learned, this was our 6th convention. So as we've done it more, we've gotten, I think, better at it. We've learned that space is good to have some breathing room. The first couple of conventions, man, we packed it in. We packed in lots of activities. We had like 1 hour lunch breaks. It's like you get 45 minutes, better be back here, because we're starting this next thing. And we would run sometimes 2 or 3 things at the same time. We've learned though that having a little breathing room is nice. So we have maybe fewer activities and they're more spaced apart. but that gives people time to do their own activities, and just hang out, just chill out. So we also, I mean, the activities are fun. We do an annual golf tournament where we, it's like the highlight of the convention, where we play the golf game. We have a course. We have a different course every year. Usually it's a custom course, and we let everybody make their own card. We've guidelines as to what you can, what qualities you can choose, how many you can choose, and then we play. It's a 2-round tournament where we play first round, then we reorganize with the leaders going last, and then it's always dramatic. So we have that. We have the time machine tournament for baseball with baseball game, and then we usually do a couple of other things too that vary from year to year. So just to kind of keep it different. Usually we have some new release or some new thing that we're doing that we try to make it so that if you come to the convention, you're going to experience something that nobody else gets to experience. So we always try to have something that people get to experience for the first time at the convention. So that makes it special. And other than that, it's just 3-4 days of hanging out with people that love board games just like we do.
And it's more than just the play games, right?
Yes, we have expanded it, in recent years to include other games, other companies. The tournaments that we run, obviously they're, we're not in a position to run a Stratomatic tournament on our own. But last year, Glenn Guzzo came from the Stratomatic community, and he had a little Stratomatic event at his table during. We have a Friday night session each year. We usually have a panel discussion. So what will happen next year is, Dave, you'll do your presentation on Friday evening, and then after that, for the rest of the evening, we'll break up into groups, and we'll have all these different guest designers. You'll have your own table to do what you want to do, if you want to. But the other guest designers, like Grant Fines from 49 Sports Games, we had Clay Dresslock from Season Ticket this past year. We had Jeff Giordano from the APBA community 2 years ago or last year. And they get their own table, and they can run whatever they want. Have their own little tournament if they want to have a tournament, or just play some games or whatever they want to do. So yes, we had Gary Brown from Stone Mountain Press.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Gosh, we had Joe Bryan. Joe Bryan from Sideline Strategy was there this year.
Great.
He was showing off he's working on a die-cast racing game with like Hot Wheels cars.
Nice.
Cool.
So yeah, it's super neat. So yes, it's more than just play. It's like a sports game community event.
Nice. Are there snacks? Do they have snacks?
Bring your own snacks. Sorry.
Ooh.
See, we used to serve food, but the hotel changed their rules. So they opened up a restaurant on site, and once they did that, it's like, okay, can't bring food in here anymore. So we cannot bring food. We used to serve dinner. We do a pizza party. Say you don't need to go anywhere. Just keep playing. Here's pizza. Just go get it. So it made for more gameplay, but we can't do that anymore. So small concession.
Steve says, "Don't forget Mike Fitzgerald."
That's right. Mike Fitzgerald is there every year. We just met with Mike actually this past week.
So before we get into people's questions, and a lot of people submitted a lot of good questions when we get to that. What did you see that needed to be different from the other companies, and essentially how did qualities become into play for you? No pun intended there. When you came up with the design for your basic card, is it like History Maker Baseball and History Maker Golf?
Yeah, these games are very different playing games.
Statistically sound, but when you take a first look at them, you're going, well, how do you get, from A to B there? What kind of caused you to want to go? I'm not being critical at all in any way.
No, I know you're not.
What caused you to go? What was the light in your head that said, if I do this, it works the same way, but I'm different? I guess
I didn't set out to be different.
Right.
That was not my goal in using qualities. They just worked for me. I really kind of started that with the wrestling game. When I was working on the wrestling game, this is the 1990s. I was thinking of how do I capture a wrestler's ability. And of course, wrestling really doesn't have statistics to draw from. So you pretty much are, well, he's powerful. He's a crowd favorite. So let's give him that quality, and when that comes into play, he'll get a benefit. So that's how I started. It was really because of the absence of statistics and the necessity of doing it a different way. And then I think the next sports game I did, I want to say the next sports game I did was roller derby. Because my plan, once I started the company, my plan was to get a foothold in the hobby by offering sports that nobody else offered.
Right.
So I went with roller derby was the first one, and eventually I did lacrosse and bowling. Although there have been some bowling games, but I did bowling, wrestling, demolition derby. So I was doing sports that nobody else was doing. That was kind of my original plan. So when I went to the roller derby game, again, statistics scarce. I mean, they do have some statistics, but they're notoriously
fudged.
Yeah, fudged, or they don't add up, or a lot of times they put stats in a yearbook just kind of so that they could make it seem like it was more real. So again, stats were really not available. So I went with qualities, and it just seemed to work. And when I began working with the baseball game in the early 2000s, early prototypes of the baseball game, I felt like, well, let's just use qualities for that. Except now I've got some stats to back up these qualities. Now I know if we'll give this guy the hero quality, which means it's going to represent about a 280 batting average. So that's kind of how it got from point A to point B.
Okay. Hey, talk for a minute about head-to-head versus playing by yourself. When you're designing these games, or even when you're playing these games, is there any difference? Because it's like, when you're playing face-to-face with somebody, you have your own strategy. But if you're just playing by yourself, does that ever come into play when you're thinking about a game, or you maybe tweaking the game or something like that?
Most of the games, yeah. I think most of us in the hobby, particularly those who've been in the hobby for a long time, before the internet, before social media, where it's pretty easy to connect now with people of similar interests. There's a Facebook group for everything,
right?
But it didn't always used to be that way. And we're pretty isolated as sports gamers back in the 80s and even the 90s. Before the internet became a big deal, most of us played these games by ourselves. We occasionally might find somebody to play against, but most of the time we were playing by ourselves. So most of the games that I've designed, really all the games I've designed, were designed first as solitaire games. And this is what drives my son, because my son's part of the business now, and he's a very different gamer. He's very much, games are to be played with people, other people, and so he gets frustrated when I say, how can we do a solo version of that? He says, what do you need a solo version for? That defeats the purpose of playing a game, But for me, it's like, well, that's a natural part of it. It's like, I might not have somebody to play against, and I want to be able to play this game. I don't want to have this game that I want to play, and I can't play it because there's nobody to play it with. I want to be able to play it by myself. So most of the games, really, I would say all the games start out designed from, talking about the play classic games, the sports games,
Right.
All those games were designed first as something that I can entertain myself with. And then to varying degrees, they have components added to them, which make them amenable for head-to-head play. And I'll be the first to admit, some games are better for head-to-head play than others. Like the NASCAR game, Red, White, Blue Racing, there's really no way to play that head-to-head. It's pretty much a solitaire game, or if you got multiple people, you just play cooperatively. You just sit down and you run the race and you just sort of enjoy it together. You're not actually playing. I'm not playing against you. I'm not, manipulating this driver or coaching this driver. So that is on one end of the extreme. That it's really not it's not really a game. It's a sim. The soccer game also it has some strategy elements to it, and there are some decisions, but it's not, for head to head. It's basically we sit across the table and watch our teams play, and we have a couple of decision points, but generally speaking, we're watching the players play the game. Football game, on the other hand, is very interactive because you make your play call, you make your defense selection. There's lots of crunchy decisions to make, strategic decisions. Do I want to go for it? Do I want to go for two? I mean, there's that makes for a great head-to-head experience. The baseball game is similarly great when you play head-to-head because you've got lots of decisions to make, and I think even more so because of the strategy cards. They give you manager strategies that typically aren't represented. They're psychological strategies like walking to the mound or coaching up a batter or dugout chatter, motivational stuff that has an intangible effect, but a real effect on player performances. So you get to implement those. So it makes for a really good head-to-head experience. So all the sports games are designed first as solo games with varying aspects of head-to-head, compatibility after the fact.
Okay. What was the idea with bringing in umpires as part of the baseball game? I don't think I've ever seen officials become part of the story.
Because I don't remember exactly, but I felt like they're an important part of the game. They impact the game. Everybody knows Don Denkinger's blown call. They have their legendary moments, just like the athletes do. So I felt like it was appropriate that they be represented in the game and that they have an impact on the game, not overshadow the game, but a couple times a game they're going to have some input, and it could be crucial. I remember, one of the highlights of my career, we did the World Series pre-play where we did the in-season set. We played out the World Series before it happened. This was 2017. It was in Seattle, and the game was won. It was a game 7 that was won when the guy went for home and was ruled safe, but was actually out. The umpire missed the call, and we did the video review, but the video review was like a very low percentage roll that it was upheld, but it was upheld. So it was like a super close call, and upon we all knew that it was actually out, but it won the game, and that was just such a memorable moment. So they do have their moments, and I'm really glad that the game includes that.
Yeah, we had J. Thomas Hetrick on, who wrote a book about the 1899 Cleveland Spiders.
Oh boy.
And he was going off, and we just let him go. He told story after story about 1899 baseball. And there was one play, because back in the day, they would only have 2 umpires. And if one was too hungover, they had 1 umpire. Okay.
Right.
And he told a story about the Spiders were playing a game, and the other team hit the ball down the line. It was a fair ball, and it went into foul territory. And there were people who used to sit on the grass, and watch the game.
Right.
And this big fat guy sat on the ball and would not get up. And the Spider outfield is trying to push him off to get the ball. And the guy went around and got the home run before the guy got off the ball. that was a story that he told there. But and then the umpire, there's nothing the umpire could do about it. He's just like, it's just the fan's sitting on the ball. What do you want me to do?
Right.
So,
right.
So different things like that come into play.
I think, just if I can interject for a second, baseball, when you really step back and think about it, baseball is so much more. I mean, baseball numbers and statistics are important for baseball. They're crucial for baseball. But take a step back, there's so much more to baseball history and tradition than just the numbers. And, I think it's neat when a game can capture, more than just the numbers. And I think it's entirely appropriate.
You a baseball fan growing up?
I did follow the Brewers. We lived in Wisconsin. They moved. I remember when they moved from Seattle to Milwaukee. It was a very exciting day. It's like, wow, we're gonna have our own team. So I listened to many hours of Merle Harmon and Bob Uecker in the broadcast booth. So yes, I was a baseball fan, definitely.
Nice. Where are you here right now at Play Games with it being fun and it being work? Where is that line today for you?
I I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question. I would say it is fun. I would say it is more and more more and more work. It's become there's become more work to do. Um, but if it ever gets to be more work than fun, then I'll have to figure out something else different to do with it, because it really should be. I am a big believer in enjoying what you do.
Mhm.
What was it? I think it's the ancient Chinese saying that if you find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's what I really feel blessed, in my life, to, first of all, as a radio disc jockey. It's hard to consider that work, although it was work, but it was so much fun, and I get the same, really even more satisfaction from the game world than I got from my radio career, and I got a lot of satisfaction from my radio career. So.
Oh, fantastic. Let's see. I get another question for you here, and this is something that we've been talking with game developers kind of off to the side, and we might do a whole show on this and have some people on to talk about this. Printing costs versus PDF. That seems to be a very hot topic here. There's some people like Grant, I think, was saying he's getting away from the print and going PDF only. I think Gary was talking about that too.
Gary has done that, yeah.
I could be mixing them up,
No,
but
no,
we've been
you're
talking.
right.
We've been talking to them, and they're saying that, I know some companies don't want to do any PDF. You guys do a mix of print and PDF sales, but they're saying that the print is just getting so expensive, and then the shipping and what they have to charge to make it worthwhile. It's kind of frustrating them, and it's frustrating the customers. But at the same time, you get the PDF, which can be easily pirated too.
Right. So I don't know how to really go beyond what you just said. That basically is that all those things are true. Printing costs are extremely prohibitive. Shipping costs extremely prohibitive, and other things like buying dice, and I mean even bubble wrap. All the things that we have to purchase to ship stuff. It's not just the postage. It's not just the amount that you have to charge to ship something, which is substantial. I mean, the Postal Service just raised their rates again here 2 weeks ago. So that is substantial, but also the cost of shipping materials, is getting more and more expensive as well. So yeah, it's tough, and PDFs are a solution, but that kind of puts the printing on the end user, and then they have to bear those costs, and then they've got to go to Kinko's or whatever and have it printed, and absorb those expenses themselves. And also, I will say, you want to put out an attractive product. You want to put out an attractive card with lots of color and lots of graphic value, and you want to have some intrinsic value in the product you're selling. But the catch-22 to that is, if you're doing it as a PDF, then somebody buys the PDF, they've got to print it, and they're either draining their toner cartridge, and it gets to the point where they don't want to print it because it's good. They know that they're going to have to go and buy another toner cartridge. So then it's frustrating for them. So yeah, it's a frustrating situation. We have a printing operation set up in our basement here, so we print our own stuff. It is a high-end finisher called a Duplo, which does our perforation, because perforation is extremely expensive as well, to have it perforated and then shipped and then printed on. So we do it all in-house now, and have for this is our third year doing it ourselves. Wow. Where if I could pick up my computer, I'd show you our machines. So we're able to do it basically at wholesale rather than retail. Whereas, for many years we paid retail price for print stuff, and then we had to sell it for retail plus, in order to make any kind of make it worth doing. So, we are able to print and finish stuff because we have our own operation in our basement. In fact, we've been printing Grant stuff for him.
Okay.
He's been purchasing it from us, but it's hard. It's hard to make a go of it when you're having to pay at retail versus wholesale.
That must come into play when you're either designing new games or designing seasons or designing cards or express versions of the game. Is, how much ink are you using on, the cards or the charts or whatever. I know Ron and I, we do a lot of game testing, and people will send us stuff we'll take a look at. And there's been a few times where people have sent us games to check out, and I would get back to them and says, quite honestly, I says, I would go through all the ink I have in my house just to print out your charts.
It looks great.
They look fantastic. They're unbelievable, but my red cartridge is going to be gone by the time I print out this full page of red with white text. So I says, you might want to either have a black and white version or tone down the color. And we were honest about that. It's like, and so it's like, that needs to be, like I say, when you're designing stuff, you got to keep in mind, boy, this looks great on the computer. How do I get this? It's got to be printed, and someone's got to use that ink, whether it's you or Staples or whoever, and that just raises the cost too. So I imagine that, it's got to be some kind of a friendly design now, a printer-friendly design when you're doing some of these things.
If you're doing PDF, if you're offering it as a PDF product, yes. If you're going to offer a PDF product, you've got to have something that's printable. And so like we will do like a black and white version and a color version for some of our sets, like the Baseball America set. We have a deluxe color version that has team names and stuff like that, and we also have a black and white version. So if you want to, and when you buy the PDF, you get both. So if you want the color and want to drain your toner cartridge, go for it. You want to save some ink and just do the black and white, which is minimal. You can do that. So yeah, you do have to keep that in mind with PDF products. When we're making it ourselves though and printing it ourselves, then we want it to be as nice as we can, because that's what you would want. You would want it to be as nice as possible.
Yep. Now let me see. You do the sports games. I have a bunch of them. I don't have all of them, but I have a lot of them. And then you do some non-sports games, right? So then you split up about a year or two ago that you have like a Play Classic now, and talk about that.
So this actually goes back at least 5 years. We recognized that our sense was that our mission statement has always been, since day one, January 1, 2000, our mission statement has always been, preserving and advancing the grand pastime of tabletop sports. So, I think we've done, it's one thing to preserve, that's great, but how do you advance it? And one of the things is to go into new forms of sports games, and also parenthetically to that, to have different kinds of non-sports games, adopting some of the things that we've done in sports games, some of the mechanics that we've used successfully in sports games, apply them in a non-sports context in order to grow the audience. And the idea would be somebody who's maybe an Amelia Earhart fan, who's a history fan, they might get, Aviatrix, play the game, enjoy the game, go back and say, oh, look, there's a golf game. I think I'll try that. So it grows the audience, grows the audience in that way, in a different way than just trying to go for sports people. I think that, the sports board game audience is limited. It's a niche audience. It's kind of a niche within a niche.
Right.
And so in order for it to be sustainable, we need to bring more people to the party. And so that is one of our strategies, to bring more people to the party, to expand into non-sports games, and hopefully, get them to, produce games that they're going to enjoy. And then when they enjoy them, come back and maybe try one of the sports games. And we're confident that they'll try those and enjoy those as well. So that's the strategy between, the Play Now and the Play Classic titles. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish.
I was going to say they're all on the same site now. We did split them off into separate sites at first, but then we, frankly, it became too much work trying to maintain two sites. So, we're doing a lot of duplication. So we just put everything on the same site. It's all under play.com. And then you can toggle down on the site whether you want to go to Play Classic or Play Now. But they're all presented in the same place.
You must be thrilled, or I hope you're thrilled, that your style of gaming has been carried on by Al Wilson and Gary Brown, for instance. Fascinating baseball, Al's football game, the drive-by-drive game, Gary's hockey game and soccer game also have a lot of character qualities type play too. I mean, that's clearly you've been a huge influence in those designs.
Well, Al is my best friend. I love Al dearly, and he's has been just so instrumental in everything that we've done. I remember flying to San Diego to visit him in 2013, and we just instantly kind of clicked. And so I'm pleased that I'm pleased that he's going in the direction that he's going in. As far as Gary and I go way back. We both lived in Dallas. I met Gary even before Play.com. As part of Jim Gordon's the bulletin board. We just discovered that we both lived in Dallas. Gary was in the telecom biz. I was in the radio biz, and we'd just start getting together and playing. We'd get together once a month. He'd come over to our house over there on Rolling Hills Lane in Dallas, and we'd play games. And so, Gary goes back even farther. He's an old friend of mine. And so, I'm pleased. That how influential I've been. I don't know that I've been that influential. They're both pretty sharp guys on their own. So anything that I've brought to their enterprises is probably coincidental.
Nice.
Before we get into the user questions, I don't know, Dave, how much more you had before we.
I have one more question for him, and then we'll get into the questions that we were sent in. And anybody in the chat room, if you have any questions, you can stop posting them now. We'll get Keith answering those for you.
Go ahead and ask that, and then.
All right, so you're doing the non-sports games, and I can only imagine that people, friends, customers, whatever, contacting you, and they're saying, hey, you know what would be a great idea for a game is this? What's the craziest game someone's pitched to you that they suggested you make?
Oh my gosh, the craziest game that somebody's pitched to me. Let me go to my desktop folder and see what I can. Hold on. I don't know.
A couple crazy ones. I mean, I imagine people saying, "Hey, Keith, you got to make a game about
you do a casino dealer sim or something like that."
Ants wrecking a picnic or something like that.
No, I don't get a lot of people submitting those ideas. I would say, I've gotten everything from pickleball to Australian rules football to tour bicycle racing, the Tour de France or whatever bicycle race. What else? Curling, rugby. None of those are in and of themselves weird or wacky.
I just think of more along like the non-sports games.
Some of those are Olympic sports, So.
We've gotten the submissions for like an anarchy game where civilization is turned over by anarchists. Again, it's probably really, if you look at the general board game hobby, you'd be astounded at what games have been made already. It's like there are no wacky ideas. There's probably already a game out there that has that theme. So I don't know that I've really got anything more crazy than probably as soon as we sign off, I'll think of something that I received, and I said I'll probably say I should have mentioned that to Dave, but it escapes me right now. Other than what I just mentioned, I do have a folder on my desktop for games, users submitted games that I can just go to and look at.
Have you ever gotten one that you've published?
Have we gotten one that we published? No. Well, okay. We did Planet Flipper, which was a Play Now title from Daryl Durston. We met Daryl at Dice Tower West, and he pitched that game idea to us. And we did Scorecards, which is Mike Fitzgerald's game. So yes, we have. I guess we have done. We have not done any sports games that have been pitched to us. Okay. I will say most of the sports games that are pitched to us are based on our own game engines. Mm-hmm. They're not it's not a game that somebody's come up with on their own. It's a game they'll take like Soccer Blast and switch it to Australian rules football. So So we haven't gotten any new game submission ideas that we've implemented.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. So Scotty from Bellingham, Washington asks, how do you come up with all the fictional names you put into your fictional leagues? He messaged me that question by Mr. Howard. He messaged me that question when we said that you were going to be on.
That D. Scott Howard?
That is D Scott Howard.
D. Scott Howard. I know D. Scott Howard. So I'm not sure how I want to answer that. There's no set way of doing it. Generally speaking, though, it's a mix of what's the word I want? Of considerations.
Okay.
Number one, the sport. You want to have an ethnic mix that matches the ethnic mix of the sport. That's important. Second of all, you want to have a name set that matches the era. So, for example, I just did the 1954 Century League, and people named their kids different names in the 50s than they do in the 2000s. So that has to come into consideration.
I mean, when's the last time you saw a kid named Mary? That's my mother's name, and she was born in 52. But when's the last time you saw a kid?
Oh, we have Mary Supernaut from the Supernaut family. Comes to our convention every year. She's like 12.
Okay.
So there are some Marys, but what about like Hazel, or for guys' names like Elmer? Nobody names their kids.
Oh no.
Or Horace is another name that's I watched an online thing one time. This guy is able to. He's a name specialist. He studies names. That's his thing, and he can tell you when you were born within like 10 years based on what your name is. And it's astounding. Now if your name is John, I don't know. He probably has to.
Good luck with that. I mean, that's not
right. But if your name is Kelsey or Stacy or Jared, he knows when those names were popular. So anyway, that's off the point. So those factors come into play, and you want to have a mix of names that is reflective of the actual distribution of names. So there are certain names like Williams and Johnson and Smith that are common. You're going to find those names in every sport. Then there are other names that are, they're just like, whoa, I've never seen anybody with that last name before. So you want to have the proper mix of names based on familiarity, general use in the population, but also have names that are, unique and memorable. So all those factors come into play.
Software driven? It's ones that you come up with by yourself, or?
I generally do it by myself. Yeah.
Do you ever drop in any Easter egg names?
I do. Yes, I do. Never. You won't get me to admit them, though. You'll have to find them on your own.
Nice. Let's see. Okay, I got one over here from David C. Will there be any more Cold Snap seasons produced, new or past?
Dave Gambrell continues to make the CFL seasons, the current CFL season. We posted the 23 season back in May, or was it? I think it was early June. And David is very, dedicated to keeping that going. As for past seasons, I'm forgetting his name. He's in Wisconsin. Joe, I forget his last name. I'll remember it as soon as we sign off. He's done a lot of the vintage seasons from the 80s and 70s and 90s. So the market for Canadian football, unfortunately, is just not that strong. I've had a number of discussions with people offline about that. And remember, I was talking about how when I started Play Games after the radio thing, ended, when we decided to stay here in Denver, looking for sports that nobody was doing, Canadian football was one of them. So that's where Cold Snap was part of that strategy.
Joe Pritchard, I'm seeing.
Joe Pritchard, that's right, Joe Pritchard. Yes, big Blue Bombers fan. Joe, if you're watching, I'm sorry I forgot your last name. But yes, Joe Pritchard has made several vintage CFL seasons, but there's just not the demand for it. Coupled with the fact that there's enough freebies to keep people satisfied, it's hard to justify spending the time to create new vintage CFL seasons. I'm not sure what the future of Cold Snap is. I think not to get into get off the course on the discussion. I wish the CFL did a better job of marketing themselves. It's a fantastic game. It should be way more popular here in the United States than it is. I don't know why it's not. I think that, just getting on my soapbox, I think when the CFL expanded into the U.S. in the 90s, that was the right thing to do.
It was amazing the people 30 years later who still talk about Baltimore.
I went to watch the San Antonio Texans play. I saw Baltimore play in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. It was so funny. We stood up and sang the.
How did they? Was that field big enough for those end zones?
It was. Yeah,
25-yard end zones in the CFL.
The Alamo Dome was actually built, I believe, with the idea that they might get a CFL team. So it is big enough for that. Yes. But the weirdest thing was standing for the Canadian national anthem in San Antonio, Texas, with two American teams playing. But that was part of the CFL procedure.
Do you think it's because of the 3 downs versus the 4 downs
that makes it more exciting, or what?
That might. Well, I mean, because you really can't have a running game. You get one play, and then it's basically third down.
No, you can have a running game because the field is so much wider. There's so much more space to run.
It's 12 on 12.
It's an outside running game, though. And you also have that yard in between the two lines that you don't have in the NFL, which makes it easier to create a hole and get through. So I do feel like you
also have multiple men in motion too. So
yes, you can. So it's a fantastic game. I think that to finish my point, I feel like expanding into the U.S. was the right thing to do, but it would have made it. I think it might have killed the Canadian identity, which the owners did not want to do, and there were also problems with the they've got rules in place for how many the Canadian teams have to have a certain number of Canadian players, or actually there's a limit as to how many American players they can have. But the American teams didn't have that same restriction. So it was a kind of a competitive imbalance. So there were problems that needed to be addressed. But ultimately, I think the league could have been successful because it's a fantastic game. And, now it doesn't feel like, it feels like the CFL is shrinking on the national, the sports scene. And
do you think you need, like, I don't know. I've seen the Canadian football on TV, like I say, the ESPN once in a while will have it. I don't know all about it or all the rules as much as I do. I'm obviously American football. Do you think you have to have a good grasp of that game to play any kind of Canadian football game, whether it's cold snap or anything else like that?
No, it's not really. I think the rules are it is football. It's easily recognizable as football. The main differences are it's a bigger field, and you've got only 3 downs instead of 4. And that's what makes the game great, is that it's only 3 downs. It forces you it makes every play much more urgent. I think that's the key to what makes the game so great. Well, and the extra space is nice too. So it's a different kind of athlete and a different kind of skill set, different kind of strategy. But it's a very, very exciting game. And I think in terms of from a board game perspective, there's nothing that you really need to. There's no asterisks you need to put in there. It plays great as a board game as well. It's the same kind of strategic decision making, and it's super fun.
Was that a whole new game from the ground up compared to?
No, it's basically second season, with adapted for Canadian football. If you know second season, you'll instantly be familiar with Cold Snap. You'll instantly be able to play it.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to get some more through some of these questions here, Ron. You got any from?
Actually, I didn't have it open. I just sent it to you. So I just sent it to you.
Okay, I have it open. Adirondack Gus says, my question is in regards to the hockey and soccer express games. How much game tweaking did you have to do to keep those scores in normal ranges?
Well, yeah, it was quite a bit of tweaking. I mean, essentially, you're taking a game. Each of the so the full play game has a certain number of actions that you're resolving in order to get the result, and there are certain percentages that come into play in order to generate the realistic scores based on that number of resolutions. So with an express game, you're greatly reducing the number of resolutions, so the percentages have to change in order to match that, and that does require, some tweaking. I don't know how better to answer that question than that, except to say yes, tweaking is required, and play testing is essential.
Right.
And a shout out to Michael Owens and particularly Michael Owens, but also Neil Maitland and Jules Sigel, guys that played, those express games incessantly. I mean, hundreds of games in order to make sure that the results were solid.
Nice. All right. Jam 920 asks, this is kind of out of left field. Actually, be a question I was going to ask myself. But is there ever going to be any consideration for doing any digital ports of your products?
By digital ports, I think they mean like computer versions. And
Yes.
I would say no. We're strictly committed to. We're a board game company. I could see maybe doing an app, possibly, that might support the games.
Or a helper, a helper or something.
Well, there are already helpers out there. People have already made. Reggie Bowers has done a number of really fantastic helpers for the games.
Mm-hmm.
They're free. So many thanks to Reggie for all his hard work. Now I'm thinking more in terms of like the kind of apps that Steve uses to keep the score of a game or keep time for a game. Maybe call plays. Maybe an automated play caller for when you're playing solo for the opponent. You press a button and it calls the play for you. Something like that I could maybe see. But app development is not inexpensive.
What about
I don't have the expertise to do it myself. So,
what like a board reader?
A board reader,
something that would give you to give you the result.
Yeah, people have done that. They've taken the game, they basically copied the charts into an Excel sheet, and then they've got it so they can push a button and it gives you the result. Again, that defeats. I feel like that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. I am not a computer gamer. I'm not a video gamer. I do not get joy out of playing a game on a computer. I enjoy the tactile experience of cards and dice, and I think our lives are filled with enough digital entertainment as it is. I don't feel like a need to add to that digital entertainment. Plus, if you do, then you're competing with that digital entertainment. I mean, you're gonna have a little spreadsheet that gives you a textual result of a football play, or you can play Call of Duty. It's like it's hard to compete in that arena anyway. But it's not really an arena I want to compete in.
Okay. Steeler fan asks, I'd like to know what Keith's favorite play game is and what his favorite game that is made by someone else.
Well, my favorite play game, I get to ask that question a lot. And I always go back to second season because it was my first game and I spent, many years developing it. That's not to say I don't like the other games because I do. I get a big kick out of playing. The full play hoops game is super fun. But if I had to name one, I probably would name second season because it does everything I want in a football game and tells a story in a compelling way. As far as other games by other makers, I would have to go with Pokemon probably. That's the game I wish I would have invented. That is an amazing game. Pokemon trading card game, an amazing game.
That's fantastic.
Mitch asks, I'd like to know what the next Express game will be, and can you see an Express version of Red, White, and Blue Racing?
I don't know that there are going to be any more Express games, mainly because, I don't think Red, White, and Blue Racing is really, is really amenable to an Express version. I've thought about it. Like, how can I do Express Golf? Well, there's really not a way to do that would make it, where you'd really be able to capture, capture the essence. And maybe at some point it'll come to me. But right now I'm thinking, okay, golf, nah, I can't see Express Golf. NASCAR, certainly not. I don't know how you do NASCAR. I mean, you'd still have to set up all the cars. And, I don't see that as an Express candidate.
So what do you have? You have what? Hockey Express, right? And
hockey, soccer, football, both Canadian and American football, baseball, and lacrosse. We have Lacrosse Express as well, which we released at the holiday sale. So Bowling Express, bowling is kind of already an Express game. I mean, it's got the bowling game has a Express component included in it, where you can quick play a game and just kind of get a score based on what you roll. So, I mean, that's out. Wrestling Express, how would you do that? I mean, I can't see that.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of the other games that we have. I guess I could just look at the shelf. What's on the shelf? Basketball Express. We already have that. That was the Highlight Maker Hoops is essentially Express Highlight Maker Hoops Primetime Express. You can play a full basketball game in 15 minutes. So we started with basketball. We started with the Express, and then went to full play. So.
Okay. Let's see. Joe Cards asks, wondering if they would ever consider having a play games event of some kind on the East Coast. And we've
done many. We've had a couple events in Hartford. We've done events in Boston at Battleground Games there in Medfield or in Steve's neck of the woods. We did an event in Charlotte. So yeah, we have done. We're certainly not adverse to doing events on the East Coast, and we may do one this fall. It's possible.
Yeah, and that's something we've been talking about throughout the show too. Is trying to get some kind of something going here on the East Coast, whether it's play or through us or through somebody else. But yeah, I think that's going to happen at some point. In some way or form, that we're going to have something together on the East Coast. I don't know.
What really makes it work is if somebody local has a connection with a local game store that has a good gaming space, like Steve in Battleground Games. He knows the guy, goes in there and plays. He was able to ask him, look, could we meet here some Saturday? About 15, 20 guys and play games. Sure, no problem. Sometimes we pay a table fee. Sometimes we don't. I mean, that we did this in Wisconsin with Travis Jansen set up the thing in Wisconsin where basically his local game store, we came in, I flew in for it. So it's not that hard. I should say it's particularly easier. It's noticeably easier if somebody's got a connection with a local game store and can get the venue. Everything else falls into place after that. If you've got the space to play.
I'd love to see something like get a hotel for a Friday and a Saturday night that it's got some kind of a space to play and just kind of have an open gaming area there if they would allow that. And I think that's something that we might be looking into over here. And so people could come in and spend the night, and not have to drive around as much,
Right. We did that in Hartford 2 years ago. And it was a Hampton Inn right by the airport. So it was great because we didn't have to rent a car. I could just take a shuttle. The shuttle picked us up at the airport. It's like a mile and a half from the airport. We went back to the hotel, and we had the event in the atrium area. It's a little dicey though because that common area is for all the hotel guests to use, and you can't really bring in 50 people for that. I think we had about a dozen, maybe 15. So it worked out good because after they serve breakfast in that area, then that space is pretty empty for the rest of the day. So otherwise, you've got to rent the conference space, and that can be $300-400 for the day, which is not a deal breaker necessarily. I mean, we did that at the Cooperstown thing. We were in Cooperstown last year for the Hall of Fame thing, and then we did an event at the hotel before and after, and we rented the conference room. So if you do it at a hotel, you've usually got to either hope that their common area is big enough to accommodate whatever size crowd you're going to have, or you've got to rent the conference room and absorb that expense. But either is doable.
Okay.
That's why I suggest a game store, because the game store will usually let you come there for free.
Mm-hmm.
Is your products actually available in any game stores?
We sell a few, but generally speaking, we sell only online.
All right. S.J. Walker asks, wondering if any Play Now new games are on the horizon. Example, rugby 15s or 7s, Olympic sport, or Gaelic sports like hurling. I know these are very niche, but then again, so are roller derby and dodgeball, and I'm told these play games are super fun.
We do have big plans for Play Now. We've not been able to get to them because of the expansion of the Play Classic titles. We've been pretty busy. Remind me not to schedule a basketball game release, a convention, and a Soccer Express game release all within the same 30-day period. What was I thinking? That has just killed us in terms of workflow. That's one of the reasons why we're so far behind on stuff. I don't know what I was thinking. So we do have a number of Play Now titles in the pipeline, and we also have Play Now is kind of branching off into a separate entity called Studio Spicy, which is also under the Play Games umbrella, which does a different kind of a approach, and CM is kind of driving the bus on that. So yes, we do have a number of Play Now titles that are in various stages of production. Some of them are pretty close. We will be releasing some of them as soon as possible. It's just a matter of carving out the time. As far as Gaelic sports, I'm not sure about sports titles for Play Now, although I certainly would not rule it out. One of the sports titles we're thinking about was this Tacklebee, this game called Tacklebee, which it's a fictional game, not even a real game, but it's a really good tabletop sports game. It has a lot of cool decision making, and it's interesting to visualize. So yeah, we could. I mean, if we can do Tacklebee, then we could certainly do some Gaelic sports or
what about like track and field or swimming? Something that would be. I mean, yes, there are dry statistics and times and all that, but there are storytelling aspects to those things, especially when you get into the longer distance races where someone might not want to do 16 laps of 400 meters at a clip.
Yeah, I think part of the deal is track and field is problematic because you have so many different events.
Right.
You basically have to develop 5, 6, 7 different games to go in that one game, and that presents its own unique set of challenges. Second of all, the appeal, is, I want to say, it's questionable. And I say questionable in a nice way, because it's like, who knows how many people would want to, buy a game like that.
People will talk about it the next 3 weeks because it's the Olympics, but then after that, we'll talk about it in 4 years when it's in Los Angeles.
Right. And when you're spending time playtesting and developing a game, you want to feel like there's a reasonable, reasonable acceptance of a reasonable market for it. And track and field, I just don't know. I just don't know that that's got legs.
Yeah.
In fact, I wonder, a lot of the sports, that get pitched to us, like Australian rules football or curling or pickleball or things like that. I always feel like, in my head, I feel like, well, geez, if Canadian football can't make it, or lacrosse, that lacrosse game is a great game. That's one of my favorite games. But people didn't support it. I don't want to say they didn't support it. They just weren't interested in it. There weren't enough people interested in it to keep it viable. Same thing with Canadian football. There just aren't enough people interested enough to really make it to continue to develop new seasons and new vintage seasons and new and play mats and stuff like that.
We hear that from other developers too, that it's like, boy, I particularly like this sport, but am I going to spend, a year developing a game and sell 10 copies because 10 people are really into this, like me, And so, yeah, you do have to weigh that out between, realistically, is this going to, produce enough to make it
also look at things like lacrosse or for Canadian football when they're on, ESPN Ocho, or
Yes, it tells you something.
I mean, if they're not something that you come across even in a casual manner, then what's the chance of selling something like that if people don't really hear it? I mean, the days of ESPN actually having sports on during a weekday are gone. I mean, there's Australian rules football is something I remember from 40 years ago, but I'm not paying $200 a year to watch a stream at 4 a.m.
Right.
That type of deal.
Well, I don't want to let this discussion move to a different topic without saying how great a sport lacrosse is. Indoor box lacrosse is an amazing sport. We got a team here in Denver, the Mammoth, and they routinely will fill the Pepsi Center. Well, it used to be the Pepsi Center, Ball Arena now. They will routinely fill it because Denver, for whatever reason, is a lacrosse town, but yet they can't get 3,000 people in Atlanta to go to a game. They can't seem to get a foothold. I don't know why it is. Because
well, to be fair, for years when they were going to the World Series, they couldn't get 10,000 people to watch the Braves.
So maybe they're going to get 3,000 people to watch the Atlanta Flames.
Yeah, right. But lacrosse is a great sport, but it just doesn't. I don't know. Yeah. It doesn't catch on or hasn't.
Got a couple quicker questions for you, so we can rip through these. Dave Lorino, any plans to release or re-release a USFL or WFL set for second season?
We are doing the WFL set. We're going to play. So this is the 50th anniversary of the World Football League this summer, and their opening weekend actually coincides with the weekend that we're at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton.
Oh wow!
August 23rd and 24th. It actually coincides with that same week. So we're gonna. I don't know whether we're either going to replay the first week of the WFL season, or we're going to, if people would rather play different teams, then we'll just play, select matchups. I'm not sure how many people are going to be there for that. It's a mix of different game companies, so we'll have a bunch of people there, and they may want to play APBA football instead of second season. But so we're playing a World Football League commemorative. We're going to remember the World Football League at the Canton event, and we're going to do so with a reconfigured set. The set, I originally made that set in 2001, and I made it in Microsoft Word in a team sheet format. It's super ugly. I mean, it looks like a piece of it's very very plain,
very dated.
Yes, and it also doesn't have any of the bells and whistles that people like from the second season sets, like the finder columns and the colors and stuff like that. So I'm working on reconfiguring those team sheets into team cards with the team colors and the full names and all the bells and whistles, and we'll have that ready to debut at the Hall of Fame. And then after the Hall of Fame event, we'll make it available to everybody else. And it should be pretty cool.
Was that the league that the police showed up at the championship game and were raiding the
confiscated the jerseys? Yes,
Birmingham. They won and found their jerseys gone. Actually, watched that video a couple days ago.
I think you got to be an old guy to remember the World Football League. It's kind of disenchanting to me that more people don't remember the World Football League like I do. I was super excited when the World Football League started up because it was the summer of 1974. I just graduated high school. I was going off into the Army. I had some time in between. The NFL was on strike. The players were on strike. So the World Football League was the only football available. And it was a new league with new helmets, new uniforms. I was super stoked. But I'm learning that most people weren't as stoked about it as I was. But anyway.
There was no money.
Yeah,
it was badly underfunded. I'm
going to skip a couple of these because we talked about Olympics and such. Matt asks, how many hours a week do you devote to this?
It's a full-time job. This is my full-time job. So yes, it's probably more hours than I should. It's probably about 50 hours a week.
Okay. Josh asked, I would love to know if there's any possibility of restarting the fictional hockey league, Hockey North America.
Again, that is, we've talked about that. I don't have an answer for that. We have considered it from both sides. Again, the reason we discontinued it was because there didn't seem to be the interest in it that there was in the other fictional sports leagues. It's interesting. Our fictional leagues have particularly Scram, the NASCAR alternative, and Baseball America and Football America those have become really, really well received. People
does Tower get royalty checks for that?
He should. He is. Well, we named the Boston Minuteman because as his payment. So yes, generally speaking, the fictional teams do leagues do better every year than they did the year before. More and more people, I think, and it's funny because originally I always thought fictional was super neat, but people are cool to it. Like in the early days of play, people were cool to fictional teams. Like, hey, why would I play fictional? But there's a certain liberation you get from playing, especially if it's an established franchise that has a history. That you've been playing this team. You've watched Wayne Montana race, for like 10 years now. So you begin to get familiar with them, and it almost becomes, it becomes very real. Almost as real as the real thing. So our fictional leagues do really well. The hockey league wasn't doing as well, but that was before we introduced Hockey Blast Express, and I think that really is where the fresh enthusiasm for Hockey North America comes from. People are enjoying the Express hockey game, and they'd like to do a fictional project with it. So I can't say that we're going to bring it back, but we have considered it.
Okay.
And it likely will come back in some form.
Okay, we have two people asking this next question, Jim McGregor and also Pops Review. They're asking about an MMA game.
I don't think we've been asked to do an MMA game. I don't think we'll ever do an MMA game. Probably for the same reason we won't probably do a boxing game. It's just not, it's not something that I have a taste for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in order to develop a game, you really kind of have to immerse yourself in that sport, like if you're doing a sports game. So because you want the feel of the sport to translate into the board game. You want to feel like when you're playing that game, you want to feel like you're watching it unfold before you. And for me, that would require me to watch a lot of MMA. And
not your cup of tea.
It's not really my cup of tea. No, nor do I have the cable package, which would allow me to watch it either. So,
have you developed a sports game that you're not necessarily a fan of the sport of?
No, I think all the games that I've developed have either some of them I've approached less enthusiastically. It's like, I don't know, but when I've gotten into it, it's like, oh, this is pretty interesting.
Okay.
So no, like golf was like that. I put off for many years doing a golf game because I thought, I don't think there's that many golf fans. I don't think people are really going to like it. And then people started suggesting that we do a golf game, and I was thinking that the golf game engine would be based on the bowling game, where you'd roll a D20 and you'd try to aim. It'd be some manual dexterity to it. And there was a guy Bob Bickert was his name, suggested that we do History Maker Golf, use the baseball game engine for a golf game. And I went through all these reasons why that wouldn't work. That we don't want to do that. But then when I tried it, I thought, oh, actually this might work. And I began looking into golf, and I thought, oh, this is pretty exciting. And so something that I really had very little interest in, all of a sudden I became very interested in it. And the golf game, came out of it. So I would say that is an example of a sport that I wasn't. And tennis is the same way.
Right.
Not particularly interested in tennis, but once I started looking into it, really soccer was the same way. So when I was of the mindset that soccer, there's one goal scored in the game, a 1-0 game. How are you going to get excited about that? There's nothing exciting about a 1-0 game
until you watch it.
Right, exactly.
So you watch it, then you get it. Yeah.
Right. So I would say all the sports games that we put out, I've become a fan of the sport, or I was already a fan of the sport. MMA, I'm not so sure I want to, invest in that.
I've seen in the chat, any chance of expanding Red, White, and Blue to other forms of auto racing, such as Formula One or IndyCar, or
that would fall under the category of golf. Right now, it doesn't interest me at all.
Okay.
Right now, I like NASCAR. You know, for it's more than enough racing for me. I love the noise, the wrecks, the color. I especially love the color. You know, the different color schemes and just the over the top, you know, loudness and speed. So for me, that's enough racing thrills. But I wouldn't rule out someday, you know, watching a Formula One race and thinking, oh, this is actually pretty cool. And so I wouldn't rule it out, but it's not on my list of things I must do right now.
All right, where am I here? Don asks, will Play release older baseball seasons than 35 for History Maker Baseball?
Yeah. Our earliest season right now is 1935. We actually did have a 1923 season, but then we started recalculating the fielding ratings. You know, so we removed that. It was the fielding ratings for that season were calculated the old way. So rather than recalculate them, we just removed the season. It wasn't particularly popular. You know, there are people that like that era, but again, it doesn't seem to be big enough to really be sustainable. So if I could spend the same amount of time working on, say, the 1965 baseball season as I would on the 1919 baseball season. And you know, the newer season is gonna reach more people. You know, more people will be excited about a modern, like a you know, an 80s season or a 70s season or a 90s season. Yeah. I think even the 2000s is starting to get vintage. You know,
okay,
2000 was 25 years ago. So you know, that's not to say we won't ever do a dead ball season. We may someday. Don't have any in plans at the moment.
All right. Yeah, that seems to be some of the overall themes we're seeing here for some of the questions. This is another one from ST Patrick from
Hey, ST, how are you?
Sports Simulation Magazine here. And it says, will Play eventually turn to PDF option to backfill more classic seasons for each sport? So I guess the overall question is, are you guys going to continue to backfill some of these seasons for your games? And will that be print, PDF, a combination of the two? So I guess that's kind of a general overarching question that we have here.
We do have plans to continue to offer vintage seasons, and you know, as you said at the top of the show, you know, we sometimes do them print only, we sometimes do them PDF and print. You know, at holiday sale, we sometimes do them PDF only. So a lot of it depends on each season is different. We take each season individually, and we have we have metrics that we consider, and so there's not one answer to that question, except to say yes. You know, we do have plans for future vintage seasons. Some of them will undoubtedly be available as PDFs. Others will not be. Some will be available only as PDFs.
Okay.
Todd asks about, you know, what's Sam's role in the company? The specific question. You've branched out so effectively the last few years after your son came on full time. Explain his role and influence and with what you do. And it must be so cool to have your kid work with you.
I'm so blessed to have Sam work with me. It's a real privilege and a joy to be able to work with your son. You know, to do the family business.
There you go.
Although he has a very different vision than I do, because he's, you know, and rightfully so. I do not begrudge him that. It would be we had many discussions lately, you know, within the past year, 2 years, particularly the past year. And, you know, it would be very easy, I think, for me to say, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we're going to continue to do it. Look, it's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. I don't feel that way, though. I do not feel that way. I feel like things change.
Can I mow your lawn?
Always changing, and we need to be thinking about 2027 right now. We don't want to be thinking about, you know, what worked in 2000, what worked in 1980. Right. You know, we're always thinking about what's the future looking like. Where are we? What's working now? What will work in the future? So Sam's role, you know, Sam has a very wide-ranging role in the company. In fact, really. The company is really more his than mine these days. The web assets you see, the graphic design, you know, the new game ideas, the video presence that we have, the video streams, all that is Sam. Sam does all that. He creates the graphics, he creates the technology stuff. So he has a huge role in the company, and it will be growing larger, and the company will be changing as he takes over more. It will be going more in the direction of his interests, and that's a perfectly natural thing. It's a perfectly right thing, and I'm 100% behind it.
Okay. Question from Randy Gonzalez here. You ever consider making the cards bigger for some sets? He said he'd gladly pay more. I mean, all of us are getting old with poor eyesight. Any thoughts about making some bigger cards?
Well, Randy should know he bought the XL baseball cards. We did offer the 2023. We're always listening to that, so we always take that into consideration. So, like for example, we made the 2023 baseball season. We offered it in the standard size, the black and white, and we also offered a trading card size version, which was the size of standard baseball trading cards, 3.5 by 2.5, full color. So we do that. But again, it's more complex than just, oh yeah, let's make all our cards bigger, because sometimes it doesn't make economic sense. Sometimes it makes more sense. Sometimes, a lot of times, the size of the card is driven by the economics, and also the game mechanics. Obviously, you couldn't do golf course cards on 32 up, on hockey size cards. On the other hand, there's not that much data on a hockey card aside from 6 qualities and 3 or 4 stars and a name. So you don't need a lot of space. I think font size is important. All that to say that we do consider making larger cards, and as they are successful, we will do more. But there are also some cards that we can't make larger, or it doesn't always make sense. I guess we could always make all cards larger, but sometimes it doesn't make sense to do so. Like the hockey cards, we can't make bigger hockey cards because then we'd have. What about the play mats? What about the game?
Yeah.
We'd have to redesign the game itself, and that may come someday. Where we redesign the game so as to accommodate bigger cards.
Right.
But for now, that's not something we're doing.
Yeah. Now, D. Scott Howard here is saying that you're a hologram, that Sam designed this AI version of Keith that we're seeing now.
Yes, this is not really Keith. Sam made this. It fooled you, though, didn't it?
He's been You've been voice tracking on stations for years now, too, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right.
So those are the questions that we got from our Discord and your Facebook group and our Facebook group. So,
well, it looks like we're 2 hours in, so that was a good session.
Yeah, we're going to be wrapping up. One final question here. What do you think the future of this hobby is?
I think that there is a future of this hobby and that we're going to be part of it. I do feel, though, that it may not look the same, nor should it. It's completely reasonable to think that the hobby may not look the same in 20 years than it does right now. I think I want to be careful with what I say, because I don't want people to be put off or upset. I just think things change, and we are committed to, like our mission statement has always said for the past 25 years. We are committed to preserving and advancing the grand pastime of tabletop sports. Now, if advancing means doing something different in order to keep people interested in coming to the party, then by golly, we're going to do that, because that's what we do. We are interested in preserving it as well, but we're not interested in preserving it at the exclusion of advancing it. So we are going to do our best to keep this hobby, vibrant, and that's what we spend our days doing, thinking about and planning for.
Yeah, that's one thing Ron always talks about. Since we started the show 5 years ago, is that he feels we're in the golden age of this hobby right now with all the choices that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that.
And you're part of that. I mean, what you've done is certainly part of that.
But when you say the golden age, it sort of suggests that the age to come is not going to be as golden. And I'm
Well,
not sure I
that's
believe that.
okay.
And the reason why we get asked that and we ask that is, it's a lot of older people playing these games, ordering the cards, and playing the strats and the APBAs and all this stuff here, and you wonder if there's a younger crowd coming in to fill those holes, and what that younger crowd is going to be expecting. Would they be okay rolling dice and playing strat and APBA and play games? Or are they going to, want to use this? Is that what the future is, for this hobby?
I do not think that is the future of the hobby. And if you go to Dice Tower or Gen Con or Origins, you will see tens of thousands of people, young people, playing board games, just like what we play. They're not necessarily sports games, but they are board games. And so to say that, the younger generation, all they want to do is play with their phones or play on a Xbox, that's not true. I think that as life is more driven toward the computer, think about how much time the average person spends on a computer now at work these days. And when they get home, do they want to go back to the computer, or do they want to spend more screen time? No, I think that's behind the resurgence of the board game hobby. So I would say that young people most certainly are interested in playing board games. The trick is to get them to play sports board games. And we don't feel like that is a task that can't be met. And we're going to do what we can to make it happen. And it will require some, I think, out of the box thinking and some risk. But that's what we're looking ahead to.
Fantastic. That's a good answer.
Awesome.
I think it's a great answer.
I would say the golden age of sports board gaming is yet to come.
Okay.
Ooh, I like that. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this one up here. You've been listening to the Digital Dice podcast, episode 233. We were joined by Keith Avallone of Play Games as we kick off year 6 of the podcast. We want to thank everybody that tuned in over the last few years, or if you're a new listener, thanks for tuning in here as well. Ways to get a hold of us: digitaltodice.com is the website, 978-751-DICE is the text line, digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email, and over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. We want to thank everybody that sent in questions for Keith, whether it was on Facebook or Discord or whatever it is. Hopefully we got your question answered in the whole bit. And I guess, Keith, I will be looking forward to seeing you in person next year at Playcon.
I can't wait. Should be fun. I wish we had the details set. We don't have the plans made as of yet, but as soon as we do, we'll reach out to you.
Yep. If not sooner, you never know where we might connect somewhere at these conventions.
That's right. We might see you this fall on the East Coast.
I was hoping to get to the Cooperstown one. I don't think that's going to happen. It's still a maybe, but it's probably mostly a not. But it might be a last minute thing if depending on what goes on.
You're talking about Canton or
Canton? You're talking Canton.
Oh, Canton. Yeah, the football one. Yeah, the football one. Yeah, I was hoping to sneak out there, but it's kind of not looking that way now. But you never know. We're going to continue talks. We're trying to set something here on the East Coast, some kind of small gaming convention. You never know where that could go from here. But I think the conventions are a good way of keeping everybody connected. And I think something out here on the East Coast, dedicated on the East Coast, might be a good idea of some sort, and that's something we're going to look at. So, and again, if you were in the chat room, thank you so much. We had a lot of people stopping by, just kind of throwing out some feedback here at the end, so we want to recognize them. And his Adirondack Gus, who sent in some questions. Barbara, thanks for coming by. Mr. Steve Tower, thanks for coming by. Doug and Charles and Higher Ground Gaming. Yeah, he's an East Coast guy. He wants to do something on the East Coast. Yes, I think, Eric, we're gonna look into that. So again, Keith, thank you so much for helping us kick off
super fun
year 6 of this. It really was fun, and thanks for answering all the questions. And we had a great time.
So did I. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate all you guys do for the hobby as well.
Thank you so much. All right, stay tuned, Keith. We're going to sign off, but stay tuned, and we'll have some parting words with Keith. Again, thank you so much, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.